Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey, welcome to episode 223 of the podcast. In this episode, I talk with my friend John Huber, and we talk all about frustration with people leaving, and that's something that a lot of churches have experienced now for sure throughout the pandemic. Many times, you don't even know they're gone because you were online, or maybe your church is meeting in person, but they weren't meeting in person. And even staff and just different things like that we've experienced during this time. And so John and I talk a little bit about that, but we mostly talk about developing staff. So your team, and even if you don't lead staff, you can apply these exact same principles to leading volunteers. And he has a kind of a framework that he uses to go through and help and serve and develop the staff that he leads. Again, I think it would apply really well to volunteers. You might scale it back a little bit, or maybe not use all the pieces that he uses, or maybe it's something you only talk about once or twice a year with a volunteer versus with a staff person. It might be a monthly one-on-one. But either way, you're going to love hearing the framework there, and I think you're going to resonate with some of the frustrations of people leaving. He talks about different groups of people and defining them by engagement. And so I thought that was really, really helpful. You can get all the links and notes at nickblevins.com/episode 223. But let's go ahead and jump into my conversation with John Huber. It's good to have my friend John Huber back on the podcast. Welcome back, John.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Nick. Thanks for having me back.
You bet. It's been a while. And I feel like, with pandemic, it feels like that year was like 4 years. So it feels like it's been a decade, but it was a while before pandemic since you were last on the podcast. But you're at Westside Family Church. Some things are the same. I'm sure a lot of things are different, but give us an update. How are you doing? How's your family doing? The church, everything?
Yeah, no, it's, just like anyone, we're navigating through this new season of figuring out ministry, what it looks like. Issues that were that happened before are not necessarily issues today, and we're just learning. And I think this has been a great season for the church to rediscover maybe some foundational truths, maybe go back to some things that they lost sight of. And so for us here at Westside, that's what we're doing in our family ministry. We're just constantly looking for ways to just stay relationally connected with our families. And continue to share the gospel. And those have, when I look back at the 23 years of my ministry life, 10 years in Western Pennsylvania at a church there, and 13 years here, the secret sauce for me has been sharing the gospel and building relationships. And I think really at the end of the day, there's no pandemic that can take that away from the body of Christ and the church. And so that's what we've continued to look at and really lead through the season by loving people and making Jesus known to them.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about two things today that are like very different topics. But the first one, people, as soon as I say it, I think everybody's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, we're feeling that." And the first is just the challenge and the frustration when people are either leaving our church or disconnected, which that's what we're seeing now, right? Like, I don't know. I know you and I were talking about how at my church, I feel like there's just a whole percentage of people where it's like, I don't really know how they're doing. Are they watching online? They're not attending in person, and they're probably not in a group or something. They're not connected in some way. And we have made, we've reached out, we've made care calls and things like that, but it's, who knows? The other thing we do want to talk about a little bit is also creating personal and staff growth plans, which, like, you're the person I think of when I think of that. Every now and then I get somebody who's reaches out and says, "Hey, I'm taking this role at church," or I've always the kids pastor, now I'm the next gen pastor, or I'm taking this role where I'm going to lead more staff, and I'm looking to who to talk to, and you're the name I think of. I think like when it comes to like developing staff, leading staff. Your name certainly comes to mind first, but I want to start with this idea that people leave or get disconnected, and that's hard. That's frustrating. And during this season, I don't know if you've seen this, John, but like senior pastors already carry this weight, and now they're carrying it even more because it's like so not what it used to be. And so they're carrying this burden of where is everybody and how are they doing and all that stuff. So what's that look like for you guys now? You've got, what'd you say, about 50% of your pre-COVID attendance?
Yeah, last weekend we were just above 50%. And here's what I would encourage everyone with. When I think about families, and I think about people coming to our church and being involved and engaging. A couple things. One, I don't know that we ought to bear the burden of the responsibility of them either coming or not coming. And here's what I think this whole past year has revealed. Prior to COVID, we had every other week attenders. We had regular attenders, and then we had what we'd call the orbit. We'd see them every 6 weeks or at the holidays, Christmas and Easter. And I think, right now, I think what churches are experiencing, everybody, depending on what state you live in, it varies, in terms of restrictions, the codes in terms of amount of people you can have in your building and how you space them out, all that stuff. So it varies for everyone. But what we've discovered here at Westside is that a lot of families who, let's say they were on the orbit, on the fringe, I don't think we're ever going to see them again. I think COVID has been a great reason, or an excuse, if you will, for them just to say, you know what this has revealed to us is that church and growing in my faith is not really that important. And so they really disengaged, and then you have this other group right now that are online. They continue to stay engaged. We're always thinking as a family ministry, how do we keep them engaged? How do we get creative? So that moms and dads are spiritually leading their kids through the season. And then we have families who have really 52% of them are coming back, and they want to worship. They want to have relational connections. And so I think I would just encourage all of us to not take that personally. And I get it. I mean, you do this long enough, and you start wondering, is it me? What did I do? I've found too that in these kind of moments, people become a little more agitated. They become a little more picky. And so, they look, like this thing, COVID deal has disrupted many, many, many people. And so the level of agitation is higher. The level of, excuses, they're going to look at it and go, oh yeah, I don't like that, or I don't like that, and that's why I'm leaving. But really, COVID kind of just brought to light some, this time and this season, and people are saying, you know what, I don't, it's not really that big of a value for me and my family, and that's the part that breaks my heart. But what I've encouraged my staff with, my family staff, is here's what we know to be true. We are going to continue to share the gospel and build relationships. And so we're going to focus on everyone God brings to us and everybody who wants to stay engaged. So whether that's online or whether that's in our building. But what we're not going to do is waste time on people who have just said, you know what, it's just, they've already decided. And I don't know that we as church leaders will convince them of anything different. Now, the Holy Spirit can, and God can move in mighty ways. So you may want to keep a list of families that you just continue to pray for, and you ask God to intercede for them and pour over them and open their hearts, because COVID also has, this has been the first time in my 48 years of living that I have personally have seen on my family staff, 3 people have lost a parent to COVID. And I'll be honest with you, Nick, my dad right now is, he had COVID. He's 84. He had COVID, and he's, he made it through COVID, but it's pretty much taken his life. I mean, he's, so a lot of people, are experiencing these, crazy, emotions because it's gotten real personal for them. And so, I think, the season we're in, it's been an opportunity for us to lean in, believe that, that God is for us, He's with us, that no weapon formed against us will prosper. And so that's where, I'm just trying to keep my eyes focused on what God has called us to do. And I would just encourage every listener, every ministry leader to do that as well, because they may be experiencing this in a personal way, and our hope is not here on earth. It's what lies in eternity for us.
Yeah. And in the midst of all of this with COVID and the personal things, and just like with your dad going through that, and the people that have lost their parents, like you mentioned, some of these people that maybe have disconnected from church, there's probably some that it's like, I don't know, it's intentional in a sense. They know they're not, and that's a decision they're making. And then there's some that's probably like they want to be, but just life comes at you. And if you weren't that rooted in terms of your habits with church and faith before, then you kind of get disconnected. I think I've mentioned on this podcast before about I ran into a volunteer months into the pandemic, probably like 6 months in, at a gas station, and just the conversation just was kind of weird and different, and made me think, I don't think he's connected anymore. He definitely wasn't attending once we were gathering in person. I didn't think, I got a sense he wasn't, watching online, and I just felt like, man, that stinks. He seems like one of those people, that ended up in the category of totally disconnected. And then, what's interesting too is we just launched a 52 challenge where we're giving a verse every week for people to try to memorize and just kind of get the Bible in them, just a simple thing. And you can get it by email and text. And he signed up. And I thought, that's great. That's cool. And who knows, maybe he was disconnected for months and maybe he's trying to re-engage. But I like what you're saying, that one, we don't carry the burden of it because we can't control that. But two, focus on the things you can control. So like you said, the people who are coming, the people who we can reach new, online in our community. I think that is really important. What about, so that's probably helping the morale of your own team, because I do think that is part of what people are facing. Is it's hard. We're doing all this work. People are doing multiple jobs now. You're doing in person and online, and they're YouTube stars as well as the leaders they used to be, and yet it can feel like all that work and more work, more challenge, less fruit, right? Because you're not seeing as much of it up close. And I know William Vanderbloom was on Carey Nieuwhof's podcast. He talked about how he feels like 2021 will be the year of turnover. And he was talking about staff. And I think that's true. Look, what have you guys done in terms of just knowing that there is going to be some of that turnover, but trying to reach new people as well? Because I think what we don't want to be is in this holding pattern where we're just trying to hang on. What have you done to help reach new families in a time when that seems really hard too?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is just having an intentional plan. One of the things that we've tried to do with our staff is just make sure that you relationally stay connected. So that may mean rearranging your schedule, looking at your calendar and mapping out and planning out, okay, how do we connect with, and then also how do we cast the net, and look for creative ways. We're looking as we're moving into this next season. We run spring, summer, and fall are kind of our season, our ministry seasons. And, as we're moving through, and a lot of things are changing once again, in Kansas, things are really have been opened up and are opening up even more. And so what we are doing is trying to be sensitive to where everyone is, and not assuming that, people are on the far right or left of this, but really saying, okay, how do we be intentional to create space for that to happen? And then also focusing on our A2 community, which is, if you look at Acts 2, it's all about relationships. They gathered together in their homes, they ate together, they prayed together, they shared the word, and they served together. And so we're trying to make sure that the church wraps our family around their families, and then just looking for ways to make sure that families know that we're here to stand in the gap. Whether it's different needs. We're doing a lot of stuff with our counseling department, because right now studies are showing, and it's evident here. We actually hired 3 more counselors because the need has become so great. Because people are navigating through this, and this is all new, and different things are happening, and family dynamics and job losses. And so, I think when it comes to reaching, one, it begins with really knowing their story, knowing where they are, and then looking for ways to serve them best. And then also, I think we're going to come out of this, and things that are going to look different are You got the attractional, like what attracts people to a church. But I think people really are longing for community, authentic community where they can grow together, where they can be open and transparent, where they can confess. I met with a firefighter 2 days ago, and just listening how the pandemic and the season, he just looked at me and he goes, I just need to tell you, I'm so far from God right now. And I looked at him and I said, thanks for sharing. Thank you for being open and honest, because what a lot of people do is they just kind of push that to the side or push it down. And I think freedom happens when you just simply say, hey, man, I am far from God. And so, that we have to respond in ways that, it's going to vary across the board. And then also look for new ways to do ministry.
Yeah, with the online, especially, there's lots of opportunities there. We just had somebody recently, one of the volunteers that leads worship for us in our elementary. We mostly with our online content are using, we use Orange and we use all their curriculum. We record our own kind of intro, outros, and then we have a couple things we've recorded where our team does, like the song leads worship. We record that. They do the motions, and you get to see them. Most of them aren't that. We're using, things that we're allowed to use online that are already done elsewhere. But it was funny because she was in a random store with a mask on, and some mom recognized her, like, hey, aren't you on the videos for C3 Kids leading worship? And she was like surprised, like, wait a minute, what just happened? How in the world did you know that? And so, but it speaks to the opportunity that's there online. I think this was a family that attended in person already, but there's been a number of families where it's like they find us online, or somebody refers something or sends a link or puts something on Facebook or whatever. And it's opening the door to new ways to do ministry, which is just awesome, and I hope most churches are doing that, like exploring how do we adapt and reach people in new ways, as opposed to, again, just trying to get back to what was, which I think is key. And that sort of ties into this other topic that I wanted to talk about, which is creating personal and staff growth plans. You do a great job with this. In fact, when you were on the podcast last time, if whoever's listening didn't listen to that, I'd recommend they go listen to it, because we talked about values and culture. Yeah. I still remember I love that one you have called "We Live on the Solution Side of Every Problem." Like, I just love that one.
That's right.
So it's stuck with me. But, and so part of developing staff certainly is establishing the culture, but then another part is growth plans and goals and being challenged and all of those things. Even like this, what we're talking about, adapting to new ways to reach people. Well, for some people, that means a lot of change as a leader. I need to learn this and try to do this. So I'd love to get real practical. What does it look like for you and your team in terms of developing them? What's the routine? What are the tools? Do you set goals? How often? Give us a peek there.
Yeah. So every year, for the last 3 years, every year we begin this process in the fall. So October, November, we begin to, I'll send an email out. We have a template that we use, and we basically say, hey, as we're moving into this next year, I really want you to look at your personal and professional growth plan. And here's why this is important to me, because it started with me. When I turned 40, I read Halftime by Bob Buford and really kind of began to unpack and look at my life in a different way in terms of success versus significance and influence and leadership. And so this is where this idea kind of evolved for me. And then I started doing it, and then several years ago brought it into everyone on my family team creates a personal and professional growth plan. Because here's what I believe. I believe everyone has room to grow in their professional and personal life. I believe personal growth plans help you set goals and stay on task. And then the last thing why we do it is when we grow personally, spiritually, professionally, everybody wins. And so for us, we have 4 areas that we focus on when it comes to the growth plan. And I just think it's critical for if people really want to, develop and grow, that you have to be intentional about it. This isn't one of those, happenstances or you just wishful thinking or, a great idea. And then the other part of we go through this, and I'll walk through kind of what it looks like, but we evaluate on a monthly basis. So I meet with my directional leaders, one-on-one meetings every other week. And the second one of the month, I pull out their growth plan. And I walk through it and I say, hey, tell me about your spiritual journey. Tell me about your personal goal, physically, mentally, emotionally. So I walk through it. And so it is a way you can create a plan and not execute anything. And really all that has done is basically, it's a great idea then. And so, so that's how we kind of navigate it. And I think too, young leaders really thrive in this because it forces them to look at, honestly, if I look back at my life, there are things, many, many things I would have changed years and years ago. I just didn't know how to. You know what I mean? As a leader, you kind of learn, and we always say, "Hey, fail forward," but really, that's not great advice. So,
yeah. So I want to hear about the 4 areas, which I think you named them. Mm-hmm. But before that, too, when you meet every other week, practically, do you use any type of tool for these meetings? The reason I ask is we are just now, as a church, going to be using this tool called Leader, except there's no E before the R, so it's Lead R. Okay. They frame it up as like people development software. We're using it primarily for leadership development, but we're going to use it for one-on-ones, goals, things like that. And I'm just curious, do you have anything like that, or is it you're just keeping your own notes? And what do you do?
Yeah. So we have every time we come into a meeting, it's a working agenda. And so basically, when we have my directional leadership meeting, I write the agenda for that. When it's a one-on-one, the first one and the second one is their agenda. So I say it's their meeting, but I always take a part of it. So we put on there goal review, your personal, professional goal reviews. And so, yes, we use it's just really a Word document that it just helps us kind of, one, as you're moving through the month, keep track of, hey, I really need, this, and this. And then, for us, it's I also write notes. Actually, truth be known, I don't write the notes. My admin will write notes on the agenda document. And then after the meeting, that agenda document goes out to everyone in that meeting. So that way there's accountability and, hey, we talked about this and we did this, and this. And so that just gives them a reminder. And to be honest with you, Nick, I'm getting kind of old. And my memory is starting to lapse. So
fade. Plus if you're having that many, like how many meetings are you in? That's the other thing. You're in a church and in a role where that's most of your job. So it makes sense that you can't keep all those together.
Yes. But I recommend it for whatever size you are. Anytime you meet one-on-one with somebody, or, if your staff is just you and one other person, or you and 2 other people, it's always good to capture in a document and then record if there were any action steps that came out of there, to-dos, look into, whatever it may be. I find it personally that way everybody is on the same page. It helps everybody stay on the same page. And then also what that does is for people who are not admin or organizationally designed, it helps them, as a tool. Oh yeah, you know what? They can go back and look at that, look at the notes, and I just think that's important because, then that way everybody's going, oh yeah, we did talk about it. Because I don't know about you, but I've been in 1 or 2 meetings when someone's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
or
sure.
I've been like that. I don't know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, we did talk about it, but so that's where this is just a little tool that I use just to, go back and reflect on. And then also just if there's any action steps that I have to take, I can go back to that document and go, okay, you know what? I need to do this, and this, according to, the action plan.
I'm just now remembering that I easily forget things like that too, because, I use the Marco Polo app. You and I've used that too at times. And I had sent a video message through that app to some of our kids team asking about something. And then I didn't get to see the reply till like 6 hours later after a bunch of meetings. And as one of them starts talking, she didn't name what I said, and I didn't even know what I asked. I'm like, gosh, what did I ask about? What is she talking about? Until the next person jumped in and said it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what it was. That's right. Forgot about that. So I get that. The other thing I would say too is if somebody's listening and they lead volunteers and no staff, hey, this is great for volunteers too. I mean, we're gonna use this leader thing with our staff, but our thinking is 6 to 12 months in, once we're all used to it, we're going to then apply it to volunteer coaches. And so get your volunteer coaches in there and meet with them and do the same kind of thing. So tell me about the 4 areas.
Yeah. So I'll walk through this and then we'll capture it later for folks who missed it. But there's 4 areas that we focus on, and I do it in this order. And people have asked me over the years, wow, that seems like, maybe I would change the orders. And I'll just kind of walk through it as the reason I do it in this order, because I think it's important. So the first part is we talk about what is your spiritual plan for 2021. So we all say, and there's a little saying on it. It all starts with looking up. So I want to make sure that every leader in our ministry is grounded in their faith. We just went through, this past year, and I'm telling you, I think faith has been the key that has anchored a lot of leaders in ministry, because we were all in it together, and it was it's been crazy, right? And so we say, hey, what is your intentional plan to grow in your faith this next year? And it just keeps them grounded over the long haul. And then the other part of it is it helps us to not lead from a place of emptiness. When spiritually we are grounded and we are filled up, that's where we lead from. Now, I will say there are times and seasons for all of us that feel empty, that feel worn out, that we're tired. And so that's a different feeling. That's a season where you just may need to step back a little bit. I tell my staff all the time, hey, listen, if you need, a day to be off, and you call whatever day you want. I don't care. You don't have to take PTO, but I want you to go and just spend the day with the Lord. Find a retreat center, find a cafe, whatever you want to do, to just slow down, reflect on the Word, be in prayer. So that's that's number one. And then for me, I ask for specifics in each of those, so we bullet them out. I'll just kind of walk through mine real quick, and that way it'll give you a little reflection. But so my plan for 2021 is it starts every morning in my morning devotional. I very seldom do I deviate from being in the Word of God every morning, and so I get up early and I get in the Word. I do a method. It's called Read, Reflect, Respond. And so I really just take time to dig deep into the Word. I use YouVersion, so I'll often will go through one of their studies or devotional. I've just found that as a great tool because I can take notes in there. I can invite other people to do a study with me. Right now, I'm the chaplain for our local police department, and so I have several of the guys who actually do a study with me. So that's been a lot of fun because there's accountability in that, and I'm growing in my faith and I'm helping others grow in their faith. And so that's, so using tools are important. The one thing I try to do after my study is I journal. So I want to make sure that I move my mind. And Nick, I think you know this about me. I'm moving at Mach 5 most of the time. And so I try to get out my thoughts about my quiet time, my devotional time into my journal. And then after I do that, the goal I added for this year was sitting in silence for 20 minutes. And that is one of the hardest things for me to do.
That sounds really difficult.
Yeah, very difficult. But I will tell you, it has forced me to slow down. It has helped me to reflect better. And then it really sets the tone of my day. And so I think great leaders, when we're intentional, where it all begins is looking up. And then the last thing I have for my spiritual plan is I have two mentors that I have allowed to speak into my life. These are people I met with my one today for lunch, and they look at me and they can ask any question and they can tell me anything, as it relates to my relationship with my wife, my kids, my ministry. And so sometimes it's hard, but having those mentors in my life to allow them to speak into maybe areas, that I either refuse to acknowledge or, just need reminded about. And then those two mentors, they can call my wife at any given time. And so, and they have, and that's always scary, when they say, "Hey, I talked to your wife." I'm like, "Oh, Lord, have mercy."
Next? Yeah. What's next?
So yeah. So the next one is this is more on the personal level, and so let me unpack this one for you. You can't give what you don't have. Okay, and so I personally believe that your physical fitness, your mental and emotional, and your relational connections are critical. I have learned over the years, one of the things that I try to do when I went to the doctor, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, he looked at me and said, "Hey, your cholesterol's through the roof and your blood pressure is not good." And I went home and I was like, okay, I told my wife, and she's like, "Well, you do kind of eat like crap and and you don't exercise and you don't, you don't stay up, or you stay up late." And so I really, the options I had at that moment were to get on medicine, or to change my lifestyle in terms of my physical being. And that's what I chose to do. So I made a commitment, and in my personal plan, I work out 4 to 5 times a week for 45 minutes. And so that was, something that I'm pretty good at. But you have to be intentional, and you have to plan it out. So in other words, it goes in my calendar, the day of the week and what time. And I say 45 minutes because you don't need to work out for 2 hours to be in shape. You just need enough time to, get your cardio up and really, whatever you want to do. Like I lift and I do cardio. And then the other part, one of my goals by July 1 is to lose 5 pounds. COVID, I don't know about you, but it's has not been friendly to me.
Yeah.
So my 6-month goal is to lose 5 pounds. My year goal is to lose a total of 10 pounds. So right now I'm down 3 pounds. So I still have some time.
Nice.
The other part in the personal side is your mental and emotional side of who you are. Everyone has it. Most people don't know what to do with it. Most people don't, process and ask for help when they need help. And so I think, being sound mentally and emotionally is critical for everyone. Whether you're leading ministry or leading your home, it's important. So I have done leadership coaching. I have done counseling. Whatever you have to do to just make sure, even if it's with your spouse. I mean, 10 years ago, my wife and I, we went to counseling together because, man, we were at a place where like we need like a mediator, and men, we don't call it counseling. We call it a life coach, because that sounds kind of better, right? So asking for help in seasons when you need it is important. And then, relational connections. This is a big one, and hear me out on this one, because I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I really try to spend time with friends that are going to build me up and not tear me down. I don't know if you've ever been around, the Nancy naysayers. I had a friend that he was a good friend of mine, but man, every time I talked with him, it was just, and I finally, said, you know what, I probably need to spend less time with him. And so just made a choice. The relationships that I'm going to have in this season of my life are going to be ones that build me up and encourage me. And I feel confident that I can encourage and build them up. So that's the personal side of it. The next one is my family plan. And this really has to do with my legacy. I do think when this is all said and done, many ministry leaders have lost sight of their own family in the midst of doing ministry. And I will tell you, it can happen to the best of us. And here's the deal. I've had seasons of ministry where I can justify that very easily, and so I just, my plan every year is, it starts with my marriage. What's my plan with my wife? Because, I want, if we're going to lead a family ministry, then we ought to make sure that, that we can, with integrity, say, hey, we're being the very best husband or wife or mother or father, to our kids. And so, this is the part I ask my wife, to speak into. So I say, hey, Jen, what do you want to do? What areas do we need to make better as we're moving into 2021? And so, here are some of the things that we came up for this year is, first one is a daily download and debrief time. And so we basically, after dinner, Jenny and I will sit down and we talk through the day. And then also we talk through the next day. Hey, what's coming? What do we need to do? So that's an important one. And then also, COVID has kind of, our date nights have been, probably restricted. And so we probably have once a month, but our goal is 2 times a month. And so our kids are getting older, which allows us to do that. And then also, pray nightly with Jenny. I'm usually in bed before she is. And so I have to be intentional about, going to her and saying, hey, let's pray before I get into bed. Cause she says that she gets all the things done that she needs to, at 1 a.m. And I'm in the deep sleep.
I could relate to that, actually. Yeah.
All right.
I'm a late night guy, and of course having kids, you're forced to be more. I wish I was the morning person. I wish I was like the 5 a.m., go getter, but not so.
And I think it varies for everybody, and whatever works best for you, just make sure it works in, you work it in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the part I tell people too, cause they're like, you get up early every morning. I'm like, yes, but you don't have to. I have a good friend who does it at night, because he's kind of like you. He's a night owl. And so I say, whatever that looks like, just put it in the rhythm of your schedule and your life. So the next part of the family, the legacy, is my kids. This is a big one to me, especially in full-time ministry. I never want my kids to not like the church. And so, and I don't want them to look at me. And they have, I'm sure, at points. And I don't want them to ever look at me as a hypocrite. Somebody who says to do one thing and does the opposite. And so I just, really believe that, my kids are watching and so are other kids. And so I would just want to be intentional about what I say, how I respond. I do. One of the things that I've learned is I read this from a book, and I can't remember the name of the book. It might have been Whole Brain Child, but it was this idea of spending 15 minutes of uninterrupted time with your kids, and they get to choose what you do in that 15 minutes. So when I come home at night, my kids now say they know what they want to do. Like, so today, before I left, Matthew told me, my 7-year-old, we built a ping pong table last night. And today he said, "Hey, Daddy, when I come home and you come home, I want my 15-minute activity to be a ping pong game with you." You know what I mean? And so just creating that daily time with my kids and letting them choose the activity versus me choosing it. And then also just some sort of devotional or scripture reading, whether it's in the morning or at breakfast. And then I'm trying to teach my boys 4 new skills, life skills each month. Okay. And so I usually, every Saturday we do our chore list. And I try to tie that into, the chore. And then also when I'm doing something like last night, I could have put this ping pong table together in probably an hour, but it took us 3, because my 7-year-old had to, I let him ratchet up, all the nuts, what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, I almost would rather watch paint dry, but,
Yeah.
but you know what? I love the fact that he stayed engaged and it took us 3 hours, but he looked at it when we were done and he wow, Dad, that was awesome. So teaching them life skills, whether it's cutting the lawn or fixing something, those are important things too. And it's time we get to spend together. And then the last thing this year is my kids are getting older. So teach and encourage them 4 character traits, 1 per week. So, I want to teach them, to be strong and confident in who they are. And so I think you have to be intentional about that. And so that's part of that. The last area, the 4th area that I focus on is my ministry and my work life. And I think, I put it in this order because we're all called to do something. There are time and seasons for everything. And so it's number 4 because I think when I am spiritually healthy, when I'm physically healthy and mentally and emotionally healthy, when my family life, my marriage, and my kids are doing well and strong, the 4th one becomes the outflow of those top 3 things. And it also gives me good perspective in ministry. And so, this is, the 4th one is my ministry, the calling on my life, what God has called me to do, what God has called you to do. And so my goals for 2021, just like everybody, it's kind of look different. But, Nick, you know this about me. I love the lost and the least. I love unchurched families. And so for 2021, my goal is, 300 new unchurched families to come and not just attend Westside, but to be fully engaged. And so finding places where their kids are connected relationally, their mom and dad is connected relationally. And just so looking, at what that could look like and being intentional about that. The other part for me is my influence in developing 3 younger leaders over 2021. That may be a volunteer or that may be a staff. And so I have those 3 identified already. And just, so I went to them and said, "Hey, here's what I'd like to do with you over 2021. And all 3 of them said yes. And so, we've started kind of that monthly. I meet with them monthly to walk through a development plan with them. And then, the other part that I'm working on with our lead pastor is a staff development track that's consistent across the board. And so we're kind of working through that. And then also looking at, as we move into this new season of, kind of the post-COVID, if you will, is, setting new metrics for moving from success to significance. So really looking at ways, anyone can count numbers, people in the seats, but, how do we really measure and look at what we're doing, is bearing fruit, is, we're spending our resource and our time in the right places and spaces. And so that's kind of an overview of what a plan looks like. Every one of our family staff goes through this process. I will tell you, there were 3 of them on my staff that I actually sent their growth plan back to them because I felt like they spent maybe like 5 minutes doing it right before the meeting we were going to have about it, and so I would, the things that I'm going to ask my staff to do, I just make sure that I'm intentional about doing it myself.
Sure. I have to ask a quick question because you mentioned the, well, I have 2 questions. One will put you on the spot. We'll save that one. The other one is, you mentioned the 300 new families was a goal. I'm curious because I was just talking with a leader yesterday about like, she's trying to like figure out goals and with her boss and it's just a weird time, right? Like her church has, I think they're about 40% pre-COVID. So you can't really set goals based off last year. Like you're not going to hit them, or 2 years ago, I guess, rather, you're not going to hit them. And so like, did you pick 300 kind of based on where you've been since regathering, or was it based on even pre-pandemic?
No, so here's where that number came from. So last year, one of the biggest things we do every year is our kids gig. So it's our VBS.
Yeah.
And last year, COVID and it's like Christmas time for me. The week of kids gig here at our church I just love it. Thousands of leaders and kids and I just love it. And so I was pretty bummed, as we were moving into, March, everything had shut down and we were like, okay, I guess we're not doing that. And so all of our timelines and our events, they got canceled and changed. However, the kids gig, we decided, hey, we're going to move it to the end of the summer. And we're going to create the online content. We're going to create, I think, you and Kenny Conley and I'm not sure who else they were starting the idea of the kits, the take home
boxes.
kits.
Yeah. Boxes. And stuff.
So we did that for kids gig this year. And we packaged everything for them, gave them all the supplies. They got a box and a bag. And so we ended up having our biggest reach on kids gig that we've ever had. And it was, basically we had core families. We knew that they, if it was anything like our neighborhood, we live in a cul-de-sac. Our kids, were all playing with each other for the summer. And so we did kids gig in our cul-de-sac. So kids that would never come to church, we'd spent so much time because everything was shut down. And so, so we looked at that as a model that we're going to reintroduce for this next year. But this year things are opened up more. So we're going to go to back on site, but we're also going to offer it in the neighborhoods. And then the third one that we're going to try to do is identify 5 parks in our area, and we're going to host them in parks. So, we're going to pay kind of a permit fee to get a pavilion. And then we're just going to, get maybe 10 key families at each at each location. And we're going to say, hey, that park is in your neighborhood. We want you to canvass the neighborhood and invite families. So I just, for me, it's all, about how do we, we do everything under 2 things. One, it's to, share the gospel of Jesus, and the other is to connect them relationally. And so, so that's kind of the angle that we're taking at. And then we've got some other things. We've never done a trunk or treat. We did our first one, I should say, this past October, and we had over 2,000 families come to it. And we had to keep sending people out to buy candy. We did that years ago, and we actually, I would say we did that the first year, but then we had to do it other years too, because if you don't get it right, you get in a pinch real quick. Oh yeah. And that was our first on-site thing that we did, within COVID, and we realized that people wanted to gather, and we just didn't realize it was gonna, we were gonna blow our budget in 5 minutes. So
that's awesome. Well, okay. The other question, to put you on the spot a little bit, would you be willing to share that template you use for the development plans?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, usually,
I'll send
sometimes
you mine.
I don't ask till afterwards to not put people on the spot. But you're my friend. I'm like,
Sure.
whatever. I'm just gonna ask
Yeah,
him.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
cool. Well, then,
I'll send you my personal one, and that way you can post it, and then it'll be
nice.
in a Word doc.
Yeah.
So you can modify it. Anyone can modify it, change it. But it's not, the other part I say too is it's not complex. You can't overthink it. But you have to be intentional about it. And I think that's the part. And every plan, from my staff, I went through all of them individually, and they're all different. And I will tell you, the team really has leaned in. And the other part too, as a leader, they know that I care about them as individuals. And I think that's the other part as leaders, we have to make sure that the staff that we lead and the volunteers. If you don't have staff, this is a great exercise to do with key volunteers, because it helps them show that you care about them, and they're going to, in return, they're going to lean in and serve the ministry in a deeper way because they know you care about them.
Absolutely. Well, how can people connect with you if they have any questions or, social media or any of that stuff?
Yeah. It's funny. We were having a meeting this morning about social media. I've been on kind of a little bit of a fast on Instagram and Facebook. But you can send me an email at jhuber@westsidefamily.church. And I promise you, I will respond to you. You can also reach out to me, jhuber107 on Facebook and on Instagram as well.
Cool. Well, it's good to have you back on the podcast. Good to talk to you again. And we didn't talk football. You being the Steeler fan, me being the Ravens fan, didn't end well, for either of us.
Well, it didn't end well for either of us. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And your hometown, it didn't end well either with Kansas City, who I was rooting for.
That is correct. It was just a bad year all around.
It's just a dud. But anyways, it's good to have you back. I appreciate you, man. You're one of the best leaders I know.
Thank you.
So I'm glad people got to hear from you. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Nick. Take care.
It had been too long since we had John on the podcast, so it was great to have him back. He's a great friend, just a good guy. Love having him here. And one of the things that I think is his greatest strength is developing staff, leaning into others. And if you go back and listen to our last podcast episode, he talked about their team culture and values. Just some great lines. I mentioned that there in the beginning of this episode. I'd listen to that if you haven't already. But here are a few of the action items I thought of coming out of this conversation with John. I loved how he talked about defining the groups of people by engagement, by orbit. Focus on some of them, maybe not focus on people that have stepped away. That's a hard decision to make, right? It feels like you might be leaving people behind. But there is this reality that we have to serve who is in front of us. And maybe that's what you need to do too. You need to define groups by engagement and have a different strategy. Maybe you won't stop focusing on a group, but how you engage with them will be different than how you engage with other groups. I also like the idea, this is another action step, to relationally stay connected somehow. With your team, absolutely. If your church is meeting in person, if people are serving in person, well, then you probably have that connection there. But if people aren't gathering in person, how are you staying connected with them? Making a lot of phone calls, hopefully. Been doing that throughout pandemic. This is one reason. I'll give you a preview of something that's to come, and I'll probably be emailing about it soon. But for years, I've wanted to develop a volunteer app that would help you lead and care for volunteers. And when I say that, most people think of different functions within the app than I think of. They think of scheduling or sharing files and communication and things like that. And those are all ideas that I think the app will be great for down the road. But the early, version, phase 1 or whatever of this app that I'm hoping to get developed, mostly would be about caring for your volunteers, making sure you're caring for them, staying connected to them. Wish I'd had it during pandemic, but you don't need an app for that, right? You just gotta reach out and stay connected. And then the third action step is to create a personal and professional growth plan for yourself and for your team, whether it's staff or volunteers. Again, if it's volunteers, maybe you'll tweak that and it won't be the same rhythm, or maybe it won't be the same number of categories, so to speak, that John talked about in his plan, but create some kind of personal and professional growth plan that you can use for yourself and to lead others. You can get all the notes and everything and links at nickblevins.com/episode 223. We're going to have a series of interviews coming up on the podcast here with people that are leading in churches right now, and what are they experiencing? How are they balancing in-person and online? Plus, we're going to have a number of other topics that we're going to be able to hit, helping the next gen engage with the Bible and taking care of ourselves, right? And investing in ourselves and making sure we're staying healthy and emotionally healthy. So there's lots of great topics we're going to cover here in interviews in the coming weeks. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those. And I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.